So you decided to use outboard gears in your mixes, like using compressors, equalizers, and anything else in between, but you're not sure how you want to proceed. And I hope this video will help you out and guide you, and also answer a few questions you may have, whether you really want to use outboard gear or stay in the box. Now, first things first, this video is addressed to Studio One Artist Edition, not the Professional Edition. Because in the Professional Edition, you can use outboard gear using Pipeline VST plugin, which is a native plugin that allows you to connect to outboard gear for the tracks as well as the master bus or any bus that you want, and it will automatically take care of all of the latency compensation and you don't have to worry about it. I do have many videos covering Pipeline XT in Studio One Professional. But since Artist Edition comes with a lot of PreSonus hardware and Artist Edition does not come with Pipeline XT, I hope this video will help you out venture into the outside world. Another note that either Pipeline XT or this procedure will work with any audio interface that has enough inputs and outputs. I'm going to be demonstrating with my Behringer Firepower FCA 1616 with an Outboard Behringer compressor. But if you have the PreSonus audio interfaces or any other interface, it would still work. Now the Firepower FCA 1616, even though it's not mentioned as discontinued, but it's very hard to find. If you are looking for something more simpler, and a budget audio interface that does come with enough inputs and outputs, the Behringer Euphoria Umc 404 HD is probably the best option as an entry point, because not only has 4 inputs, it also comes with 4 outputs. 2, so you can actually connect your speakers to it, and another 2 to connect to the outboard gear. Another alternate audio interface from Behringer I would recommend, because you cannot find Firepower FCA 1616, is the Euphoria Umc 1820. This audio interface supports 8 inputs and 10 outputs on the unit itself, and it can be expanded with ADAT for another 8 input and output. So next step, let's connect the outboard gear, in this case the mini comp from Behringer, but it could be any compressor that you may have. But this is a great budget compressor that you can get and use in your mixes to start with. We're going to connect it to the Firepower FCA 1616 to the line inputs and outputs at the back of the unit. Of course, you will require some patch leads as well, or cables, and these are the cables that you will require. Mine are short leads because they're very close and next to each other. Makes it really handy, but the size and the length of the cable depends where your 2 units are located. Let's see how the audio is connected. I have the output 7 and 8 from my audio interface is connected to the input left and right of my compressor, and the output of my compressor is connected to the input 7 and 8. Of course, in other interfaces, you can decide which available inputs you need to use and which available outputs you need to use for your outboard gear. Let's make sure that our audio I/O setup is correct for our inputs and outputs. At the inputs, I have 8 inputs available plus 8 ADAT inputs available. I simply set up input 7 and 8, and you can see left and right selected for 7 and 8 as the matrix. Of course, I can go ahead and set up all of the inputs and as well as the outputs. But for this demonstration, that's all I need. And for outputs, I have my main outputs going line 1 and 2, and output 7 and 8, which I'm using for my outboard gear, again 7 and 8. Of course, I can always go ahead and create another one, call it outputs 5 and 6. And we'll select 5 and 6, apply. We can always move it up, make it more sense. So as you can see, we can set up that way. So it's all ready to go. I know I mentioned that this is for the Artist Edition and Pipeline XD is only available in the Pro Edition, but let me show you how quick it is to use Outboard gear in the Pro Edition using Pipeline. Let's use our drum bus. Here I can actually insert now Pipeline stereo. That's the plugin. And we can use outputs 7 and 8 and bring it back input 7 and 8 because that's how we actually connected. And let's just do pinging. And there's 33.15 millisecond delay, which is going to be compensated. As you can see, it's also out of phase. So we can change the phase as well, making sure that they are in phase. And let's do the test again. Yep, now it's all aligned and in time. So that's how easy it is. So let's just run through it. And I'm just going to enable the compressor and take it off. And let's have a listen. Just going to solo the drum bus. Let's bypass it. We can already hear how it's actually compressing. Make up gain. As you can see, as I adjust, we also can hear the volume changing as well. Really pumping up compression. Let's bypass it. Now you have some perspective of how Pipeline works and how the actual compressor is acting on the drum bus. So let's just remove Pipeline. And let me show you how we're going to achieve the same result in Artist Edition without Pipeline. One of the great things about Studio One that it allows you to select the inputs and the outputs of each of the channels as well as the buses and the master bus to not only the internal audio routing but to the external routing. As you can see, these tracks or these channels are being sent to the drums bus, which is this one right here. And the output of this one is going to the main, which is my main output right there. But we can actually direct any of these into any of our hardware outputs as well. Let's try, let's say, our this channel. As you can see, we can go to the main. And because I've set up outputs 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, they appear here as well. Or we can send it to any of the buses. So let's try sending our drums bus into outputs 7 and 8. So now, instead of going to the main bus, it's going to appear at the output of our audio interface 7 and 8, and we should be able to see the LEDs light up, and then go right into the input of our compressor, because that's how we connected at the back, and the output of the compressor will come back to the inputs 7 and 8, but we won't hear it yet. But I'll show you that in just a moment. So let's try this example first. So now it's playing. We cannot hear anything, because remember, we are sending it to the output 7 and 8. And here we can actually see on the screen 7 and 8, the outputs, analog outputs, are flashing, as well as 7 and 8 coming back. And our compressor, we can actually see the levels are going up and down. So how do we capture that audio that's being compressed by this compressor back into our DAW? Well, the first step is quite easy. Let's add a new track. I'm going to call it Drums Return, stereo one, an audio track, and I'm going to select the inputs 7 and 8 and click OK. Ended up right at the back, so let's bring it closer to here. So now all of these drum channels are going to my drums bus. My drums bus is sending it out of the audio interface, and then I'm receiving at 7 and 8 input right there on this channel. And here I'm going to record it, the processed audio. So let's give it a try. Let's see if we're going to be able to hear anything coming back from our audio interface. And we do. Let's increase the volume from the compressor, make up gain. Let's engage it first. Let's super compress it. So what we're hearing is the audio coming back from the audio interface, not from the bus. So if we mute the bus, we won't hear anything. Then nothing is going out. So now we can record this onto our track. But before we do, there's one other trick that we need to do, because this method does not take care of the latency. The latency is the time that's going to take the audio coming out of this bus into our audio interface and into the compressor and back into the interface. And again, both ways being converted to digital to analog, analog to digital, and back again into our DAW, into our this drums return channel. There's a time delay. That means if we just record as is, the drums track will actually have a lag compared to the rest of the tracks. So how do we solve this? Well, matter of fact, it's quite easy. The simplest way I've found a way to synchronize the newly recorded track to the original tracks so that they are all in time, so that we can nudge the newly recorded track left or right, and most likely to the left, is to have some sort of a signal outside the scope of the song that we can use to nudge the new track. And for that, the easiest way I found is the kick drum. So let's go to the kick drum over here. I'm just going to select a bit of that. And I'm going to press the letter D to duplicate. And then I'm just going to move it outside past the end of the song. And the reason for that is while we have compression, in this case on, recording our drum tracks, I want to bypass for this sample so that we're not modifying the waveform other than level or amplitude so that we can nudge it correctly. And this should give me enough time to bypass the compressor in this case so we can achieve that result. So for this example, I'm just going to start recording from about here, but obviously you need to record the whole track in your case. But to save time, that's what I'm going to do. So here we go. The effect is on. We are ready to go. And let's record that. I'm just going to assume that's what I want to actually record. Now I'm getting ready to bypass once the song is finished. So I'm just going to bypass it and let it record all the way through. And we are done. So now, just to make it easy, I'm just going to drag it up next to that one. And I'm just going to zoom in. So let's increase the gain temporarily. So we can look right there. And we have a little bit of nudge in the waveform there. That's a good sort of point we can use. And now we can click and drag to the left until the nudges match. And we are now in sync. And now the rest of the track, synchronized. So let's just reduce back to original size into 0 dB. Now this track synchronized with the original track. And that's it. Once we are happy with our recording, of course, we can mute our original drums bus, and over here we have our recorded drum bus. And let's add it to the rest of the mix.
Paint it black, black on black, paint it black.
Of course, don't forget to delete that synchronization at the end of the track that we added, just like that. And we are good to go. Now you may wonder why you want to go all this trouble into using outboard gear. Well, you asked for it, so I demonstrated it. And if you like this, if it was helpful, make sure you give me the thumbs up. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great time making music, and I'll catch you in the next one.